So let me take a minute here and talk about proof of funds. So there's a lot of misunderstandings about proof of funds, both from wholesalers and from sellers and agents. Proof of funds typically only comes up with agents. Most sellers don't know to ask for proof of funds. That is, unless they get educated. Now, I educate sellers on proof of funds. And what I mean by that is one of the ways that I separate myself from the competition is I help the seller understand what a legit contract looks like, what a real buyer looks like, what things to be aware of and to beware of. And because a lot of wholesalers like to have a very loosey-goosey contract with sellers, they want a very non-committed contract, a very one-sided contract. So it's all in favor of the wholesaler and not in favor at all to the seller. And so a lot of sellers are naive and they just don't understand that. So they'll sign contracts with wholesalers where there's $0 or $10 or $100 earnest money. I just did a video today all about earnest money and how to do that the right way. They'll put unlimited contingencies or contingencies all the way up until closing. They'll have a lot of weasel clauses and ways out of the contract. And the reason is if they can't find a buyer for that deal, they want to be able to get out of the contract without any repercussions. Now, I don't think that's a good way to operate. That's not how I operate. In fact, I go the other way. I'll use terms of the contract to really make myself stand out in the group. So if a seller says to me, hey, I got another offer here that's higher than yours, I'll say, great, let's take a look at that. I hope you can get the most money for your deal. But not all contracts are created equal. Not all terms are created equal. It's not just price, Mr. Seller, that you want to look at, but you also want to look at the viability of the contract and the viability of the buyer, because what you really want is certainty, because it doesn't matter how much money somebody offers you. If that never gets to the closing table, it's still zero, right? So I'll say, let's take a look at it and let me help you understand some things. And I'll say, are there contingencies? Okay, let's look at those. Is there earnest money? Let's look at that. Can they prove that they have the money? It says cash. Can they prove that they have the cash? So these are some things that are really important. Now, with agents, they know better, so they typically ask for those things. They'll say, hey, you have to put down a substantial earnest money. You have to have a proof of funds. So they know better, so they'll make sure that those things are there to protect the seller and make sure that you're a legit buyer, or to legitimize your offer at least somewhat. Whenever I get questions about proof of funds, it's usually coming from an agent. Now, there are two types of proof of funds. There is a soft proof of funds, which is a letter, which is basically a pre-approval. Now, a soft proof of funds does not guarantee funding for a specific property, because a lender cannot underwrite or guarantee or provide that unless you have an executed contract and you submit that and they underwrite the deal and then they give you a full approval, right? That would be a full approval, or a hard proof of funds would be, here's the address, here's the dollar amount. I, lender, will stand behind this buyer for this funding, right? That's a hard proof of funds. There's another hard proof of funds, which would be a copy of a bank statement. Now, people are always like, hey, where do I get a bank statement? Hey, where do I get a bank statement? Well, agents aren't stupid. They're going to tie the name of the buyer on the offer to that bank statement. So you can't just provide any bank statement. Most agents will not take that. They'll be like, hey, this bank statement says Jerry Norton, but your offer says John Doe. So how are you two related? And why are you giving me some random proof of funds? That becomes an issue sometimes. I've been doing the agent model for 20 years. In my experience, about 90% of agents will accept a soft proof of funds. So it's a letter, it checks a box. They say, okay, we got that. I can check the box and we can move on with the offer. 10% of agents are going to have an issue with a soft proof of funds, and they're going to want something more substantial, something hard. Now, what I tell that agent when that happens is I'll say, look, I can't go to my investors that fund my deals unless I have an executed contract. So I'll tell you what, let's put a contingency that gives me 5 days, 6, 7 days. If I can't give you a proof of funds, then we can terminate the contract. I need the contract so I can go to my investors and get the proof of funds that you're asking for. It's the chicken before the egg. How can I give you a proof of funds for my lender if I don't have an executed contract to show them? Okay, so I offer in Flipster, if you're a member of my software Flipster, if you're a pro or prime level, the two higher levels, we give unlimited custom proof of fund letters. So it'll have your name on there, it'll have the address of the property, and you can do as many of those as you want. We provide those. They can call and verify. But again, it's a soft proof of funds. I'm not underwriting or promising to fund your deal. It's basically from my lending institution that says we have a relationship, and if the deal qualifies, we'll fund the deal, right? It says something to that effect. Soft. Again, 90% of agents don't have a problem with that, and you can use that and it works great. Neo Jason 83, so I appreciate you. It says, Mo, if you have a good relationship with your cash buyer, they might be able to provide you with a hard proof of funds. That's another way that you can do it. If you pre-sell, I call that, or sometimes we call that reverse wholesaling. If you're working with a specific cash buyer, then you could go to your cash buyer and say, hey, I think I found a deal that fits. Do you like the deal? Great. The agent is looking for proof of funds. Can you provide that for me? And you tie that all together somehow. I don't do that strategy a lot because if you do that, then you're committing your deal to that cash buyer, and they may not be the best cash buyer for your deal, meaning the price that they are willing to pay might not be the highest price that you can get in the market. So, again, guys, you do what you have to do or what you can do until you get better tools or you get better access to things. Okay. I think about earnest money the same way. I can come in with what I call hot and heavy and offer a $10,000 non-refundable earnest money and blow away everybody else's offers with a non-refundable, big earnest money. Why? Because I can. Now, could I always do that? No. For many years, I wasn't able to do that. Or for a long time in the beginning, I wasn't able to do that. So I did what I could until I could do better. And that's how you really develop and grow in this business. You'll want to keep progressing, though, so that you can play in the big leagues. Guys, the players in the industry, in your market, in your backyard, wherever you're transacting, they're always going to have an advantage over the smaller players because they have bigger marketing, they have better systems, they have better closers, bigger teams, more capital, and they can do things that you can't do maybe in the beginning. So what do? You fight and you claw your way until you can. That's what you do. That's what I did, and that's what you're going to have to do.